Hey mamas, you're listening to the Balanced Working Mama podcast, the only podcast teaching you how to balance your work, motherhood, and wellness. I am Dr. Amber Thornton, clinical psychologist and mama wellness consultant. Each week we dive into tips and strategies and much more so that you too can become a balanced working mama. Let's dive in. Hey mamas, it's Dr. Amber here. Welcome to another episode of the Balanced Working Mama podcast. I hope y'all are doing well. It is a Friday afternoon for me. I am recording. It's at the end of my workday, right before I go to get the children from school, so we can get started with our weekend, I guess. Either way, I'm feeling good because it's Friday. I've been in our Balanced Working Mama community, just like reading through some posts and like sharing some things with them. And that always makes me feel good. I really love the community that we are building in that community. Or the connections and the friendship, the support that's happening in that community. And I love it. I'm still really happy and excited about the new mamas that joined us at the beginning of this last month. Either way, I'm feeling good, y'all. And I am here yet again, another solo episode from me. And, I was thinking about what's been coming up for me recently, but then also what seems to be coming up for you all as well. And I actually want to spend this episode talking a little bit more about anxiety. You all know, the last few weeks or so, I've been sharing a little bit more on my Instagram about my experiences with postpartum anxiety, anxiety in general that existed even before I became a mom, ways that my anxiety intensified in ways that I had never experienced before. And it felt really good to share all of that because I realized that I don't really talk a lot about my own anxiety. And I think there's a few reasons for it. One, because I am a psychologist. And so it's not that I'm afraid to talk about my own anxiety as a mental health professional, but I often just get stuck in my role, which means that I'm talking about other people's anxiety. I am helping other people sort through their anxiety. I'm helping other people identify their own anxiety. And so mine is just really not the priority when it comes to places and spaces when I'm speaking about things, right? And so, people in my personal life know about my experiences with anxiety. I share it with them, but I just have not really been as intentional about really sharing about my own experience of anxiety. So I've really enjoyed doing that a little bit more. And what I have noticed is in my own sharing of my experiences of anxiety, I am learning that you all also experience a lot of anxiety. Some of you have had anxiety for a number of years. Some of your anxieties maybe predated motherhood. For some of you, anxiety is a new experience that came once you became mothers. For some of you, anxiety is just, something that comes and goes. Some of you are really, 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 really struggling with your anxiety. And so I want to come back and talk about this topic of anxiety a little bit more. I actually want to share a little bit more about my experience of anxiety, just in case some of you all missed it on my Instagram. But I also want to help you all to identify when you're having anxiety that reaches the level of needing some support. And I want to say this because I shared, I think, a post or a reel on Instagram about anxiety. And there was a few comments from mamas, saying things like, yep, the anxiety never goes away. It's always there. And that concerned me because I don't want us to have this misconception that just because you are mothers, it means that anxiety is supposed to be the norm. That's actually not true. Anxiety may pop up, yes, And if you are noticing that anxiety is something you're feeling every single day, if you're noticing that anxiety is stopping you from making certain decisions or doing certain things with your kids, if anxiety is not allowing you to function optimally or live a life that you want, then that is actually not okay. And that is an indication that you may need some other level of support, whether it be therapy or medication management, or to talk to someone about new strategies for how to manage your anxiety. Anxiety should not be a default experience or sensation just because we are now in this phase of our life called motherhood. And so I want to make sure that by the end of this episode, you are able to really identify whether you are experiencing anxiety, and if you are experiencing anxiety, to be able to know whether you need some extra help or not. So, where do we begin? I want to summarize a little bit about my experience of anxiety. And, I shared a reel recently on Instagram, and it was for Black Maternal Health Week. And, what I said in that reel, and you all can go back and look at it on Instagram if you would like to, but what I said was that talking about Black maternal health is actually really hard for me. It's, what I've noticed, it's a week that I avoid. If y'all notice, I didn't do a podcast episode about Black maternal health. I don't really highlight it a ton on my social media or anything like that. And it's because it's a very uncomfortable topic for me. And it's uncomfortable for me because there's a lot of anxiety that goes along with the idea or the topic of Black maternal health. I think in general, when we talk about Black maternal health, or if I were to just Google Black maternal health right now, what we would typically see are stats and statistics about death and mortality and, really hard and scary things that happen to Black women when it comes to pregnancy and birthing and experiences. And one thing about me, my anxiety loves to reside in the area of mortality and health and things related to my body. And so that is one takeaway. I want you all to know that when someone experiences anxiety, it can manifest in so many ways. For many of you, you might have anxiety specifically around allowing other people to watch your kids. And it might be so big where you notice you don't ever let anyone watch your kids and it's always just you. And then maybe you don't ever get to have time for yourself because that anxiety about trusting someone else with your children is holding you back, right? Or for some of you, you might notice that it doesn't matter what it is, you will have anxiety about it. And so that typically is something we call generalized anxiety. And it's called generalized anxiety disorder because the anxiety can generalize to any situation or circumstance that you're in. So wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, anxiety is always on your shoulder. Like, don't you feel nervous right now? Aren't you scared? Shouldn't you be panicking? And then you start to think, oh shit, maybe something is wrong. I am panicking. That's what generalized anxiety does. It doesn't matter the circumstance, the situation, in or out of motherhood, anxiety is present. Some of you might have anxiety about social situations. And so maybe you are one that doesn't like public speaking because it makes you feel so nervous and so anxious that you avoid it. And so maybe you've noticed that it doesn't allow for you to get out and meet new people. Maybe you shy away from, play dates at the park because you might have to talk to somebody. Maybe you don't go to any networking events because you don't want to have to deal with that. Maybe you just don't really reach out to anyone because anxiety is really hindering your ability to socialize and connect with other people. And I could go on and on and on about these examples or these scenarios. But again, I want you to realize that anxiety can look different based on who you are and what your situation is. And for me, anxiety tends to live in places that relate to my body, my body's ability to function, my health. And it absolutely was present when I was pregnant. And about to give birth because I had so many fears about whether I was going to survive, whether something really bad was going to happen to me, whether my body was capable of doing this really big thing. And so, that type of anxiety, health related anxiety, is actually not as common, but it is a thing. There are some people who have a lot of anxiety around bodily sensations, health related things. And when you talk about Black maternal health and, the reality that more Black women are dying or experiencing really scary, grave, tragic things related to pregnancy and birth, that shit can really heighten somebody's anxiety, okay? And that's exactly what it did for me. And that's not where my anxiety started. I've always had anxiety about health things since I was a child. And, pregnancy and birth really just heightened it for me. I'm also someone that just has anxiety about other things too. My anxiety often leads me to believe that things are black and white. Right. So, it's hard for me sometimes to see the gray areas. So, for instance, my husband always calls me out on this. He's like, if you can't do something all the way, you just don't do it at all. And I'm like, yeah, because if I can't do it all the way, why even do it? And he's like, no, there's a whole middle ground. You could do it a little bit and that's fine. You could do it some of the way and that's fine too. And my brain just often doesn't even allow me to see the middle or the gray because it's always this or that. It's always black and white, right? Or, my anxiety has allowed me to become really good at keeping schedules and being consistent about things. And on the surface, that's actually great. That has allowed me to build a business and maintain it and, be on time for things, be very diligent about things. But also a little bit of that is that there's some anxiety about what happens if I don't. What happens if I miss this? What happens if I don't keep this up? What happens if this? What happens if this? And so, I'm not going to lie to you all and pretend like everything and who I am is, all these great things. Like sometimes behind it is this level of anxiety that kind of keeps me moving in these certain directions. And it might be the same case for you too. What I will say is that after I had Eden, my daughter, I was so relieved to no longer be pregnant because I was so afraid that whole pregnancy that something would happen to either me or Eden. And after my pregnancy, I did experience postpartum preeclampsia, which whew, it threw me into a place where I experienced the most intense level of anxiety I've ever felt. And in the moment, I wasn't sharing any of that on the podcast. I wasn't really sharing any of that on my social media, but I was going through so much because my anxiety kept trying to make me believe that I was going to die. I had already had Eden. I was no longer pregnant, but I was experiencing high blood pressure. I was experiencing a lot of swelling in my limbs because of my C-section. And I was so afraid that something was going to happen to me or that my blood pressure would not be managed or I would not be able to manage it. And just all these fears came up at that time. And again, another takeaway I want us to know is that when our anxiety reaches a level where it doesn't allow us to function properly, that is when we need to really seek out some support. And so for me in that moment, I was not okay. I wasn't, I didn't feel safe in my body. And I want to clarify, when I talk about having thoughts that I was going to die, this is not suicidal thoughts. I was not having thoughts of wanting to hurt myself or kill myself, harm myself. Rather, I was having thoughts that my body was going to fail me in some way. Something bad was going to happen to my body related to my health. And, all these things that we hear about related to Black maternal mental health and in postpartum. I was afraid those things were going to happen to me. These thoughts were intrusive. And what that means is that they just came no matter what I did or whether how positive I tried to be. It was hard to get rid of these thoughts. And they also were very frequent. You know, multiple times a day feeling unsafe in my body. And so that didn't allow me to be present with my family. It didn't allow me to feel safe and comfortable in my healing process. It actually made me really irritable. You know, I remember having to monitor my blood pressure, and if I would get a high reading, I remember, you know, one evening my blood pressure was high and I just flipped out, you all. I like got so angry and I kicked over the table that my blood pressure cuff was sitting on. And I just was like, I can't do anything about this. I can't control this. And I just started crying. And looking back on that, I think that was in some ways a panic attack that I was having because I was panicking about not being able to manage my blood pressure well. And so, luckily, I have such a supportive partner and a husband who, was able to, just help me and support me because those moments were dark and not easy. And, you know, also moments that not a lot of people understand. And truthfully, he didn't understand it either. And it also required me to really communicate a lot about what I was feeling, what I was experiencing, and what I needed. So that was an indication for me that therapy was absolutely required, absolutely needed. And I sought out therapy and I did a special type of therapy called EMDR. And it is a therapy that's often used for people who are experiencing post traumatic stress disorder or severe anxiety. And it was so helpful for me. You know, what I will say is that, okay, so this is, you know, psychology research tells us that it often doesn't matter what type of therapy you receive, as long as you feel connected and have a relationship with the therapist that you are with. There is ton of benefit. So I don't want anybody, you know, going out and you know, telling their therapist, I absolutely need to have EMDR because you might not, you know, or some of you might benefit from it. So, you know, I'm just telling you what type of therapy I received, just, you know, to be transparent and honest about what happened for me. And, you know, what I would recommend you all do is do some research, see if it's a good fit for you. And if so, talk to a therapist about it. And if not, that's okay too. There's so many other therapies that can really be beneficial for post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety. Um, I'm trying to think what else to say about this. I'm feeling a lot better, you all. And I think that experience of that really heightened health anxiety that I went through right after having Eden and months after was just such an eye opener for me in terms of really identifying and realizing how much anxiety plays a role in my life, period. Like after I got over that situation, I was like, ooh, I never want to feel that way again. But then I also started to realize how anxiety just shows up in so many ways for me. And now I am in a place and in a journey where I am really trying to maintain even more awareness around my anxiety so that anxiety does not make decisions for me. So anxiety does not interfere with my ability to function. So anxiety does not interfere with my ability to parent well. I'd never want my anxiety to get in the way of experiences that my children can have. You know what I'm saying? And so I want you all to be thinking about that too. You know, the one big thing is if we have anxiety, it doesn't feel good. You know, you're not going to feel good. You're not going to feel like your best self. And you absolutely deserve to feel good in this life. You deserve to feel well. You deserve to feel comfortable. You deserve to be at peace and to not be stressed. Anxiety also wears and tears on your body physically, even though anxiety is a mental emotional condition, it absolutely is terrible for your cardiovascular system, your heart, your blood pressure. All that is impacted by stress and anxiety. And so I want you to know that if you are experiencing anxiety every single day, multiple times a day, if it is getting in the way of you, just feeling good, it's time to ask for help. It's time to seek support. It's time to call a therapist. It's time to reach out to a counselor. It's time to talk to a doctor about it so that you can get on the other side of that and feel good. I don't always like to make connections about how things make you a better parent, but I feel like I've been able to like express that receiving treatment and support for your anxiety is going to be good for you. But I cannot dismiss, how being anxious as a parent also has really negative effects for your children. We are different when we are consumed with anxiety, and it often is not our best selves when it comes to parenting. And so our children deserve us in our best state, or at least as close to it as possible. And if you have an opportunity to get some support and seek some help so that anxiety does not consume you, not only are you going to benefit, but your children are going to benefit as well. And so, I hope that this episode really serves as just, I don't know, like a message for you to get the help that you need. Anxiety is not something that you should just be living through every day, all day, just because you are a parent or a mother. I remember when I first became a mom and someone said to me, yeah, you're going to feel anxiety all the time. That's just part of motherhood. And I was like, I rebuke that. I, hell no, that's not going to be my story. That's not going to be a part of my motherhood. And it sucks that that person, allowed that to be a part of their narrative. For them, motherhood meant anxiety and worry because that's what you do when you're a mom. You just worry. You worry all the time. And I know that y'all have heard that. This narrative of being a mom means you worry about your kids all the time. But we have to let that go because worry and stress is bad for your health. It's bad for your well-being. It does not allow you to live long, healthy, rich lives. And so, yes, there will be times that we will be worried about our kids, especially if they are sick, maybe if they are transitioning into new things. But our worry, our anxiety, our stress cannot hinder or get in the way of us, allowing our kids to experience things or to do new things, try new things, have new experiences, right? And it also cannot get in the way of us just having peace. Peace of mind. I don't want my motherhood experience to be riddled with worry just because I have children. That is not something that I am accepting, and I don't want you all to accept it as well. So I hope that you all will seek out some support. If you are an anxious mama and you are listening to this and this episode resonated with you, seek out some support. Call your therapist, or if you've never been to therapy before, go get one. Go get one. And so, what I always recommend when it comes to finding a therapist, if you are not, if you don't know how to find one, or if you've never done it before, one, if you do have insurance and you want to use your insurance, you can always contact your insurance company, whether it's their website or calling, ask about their provider list and look through that list to find a therapist in your area that's a good fit for you. Reach out to that therapist and then they'll likely take your insurance. Or there's two websites that I typically go to, or I refer people to find a therapist. And on these websites, you can put in your insurance if you would like to use insurance, or if you want to do self-pay, you have that option as well. And so, one, you can check out psychologytoday.com. They have a therapist directory, and you can look through there, put in all the things that you are looking for in a therapist. And what I love about it is it gives you profiles and you can look at their pictures, read all about them. Sometimes they even have pictures of their office, so that you can know if it would be a good fit. Same thing with therapyforblackgirls.com. They also have a therapist directory. And if you are looking for someone specifically who is a Black woman or works with other Black women, that is a good resource as well. All right, y'all. Well, I wish you well on this journey of really getting in control of anxiety and mental health in general. And if you all want me to talk about mental health stuff a little bit more, let me know. Let me know how y'all felt about this episode. If there are specific mental health experiences, disorders, diagnoses, symptoms you want to know more about, let me know that as well. I'm open to talking about that. Otherwise, thank you for listening to the Balanced Working Mama podcast. Please share this episode with someone that you love, and I'll talk soon. Hey, Mama. Thank you for listening to the Balanced Working Mama podcast. If you love this podcast, please be sure to rate it and share it with another mama that you know. And don't forget to follow me and Balanced Working Mama on Instagram. I'll talk to you soon.